WCLN 1170 Radio and Star Vision Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The name of the show is We Should Know. I want to thank Nicole for that wonderful introduction each and every week. Tuesdays, 2:30 to 3:30, WCLN 1170 AM Star Vision TV. Another show for you today that we're really excited about having these folks with us on a subject that's a bit kind of unusual, but it has been out there for some time. We're going to be talking about tractor pulling. We've got the people here that knows what's going on with that. Wayne Lewis with the North Carolina Tractor Pull Association. Thank you for being here, Wayne. Of course, George McGill. George, I'm just going to introduce you as a community leader. You are literally involved in a lot of activities in Sampson County and things that's going on in this immediate and surrounding area. We want to thank you for taking time to come in and talk to us about this. Tractor pulling is a big deal, Wayne, and I'm going to start with you. Historically, it was kind of interesting to me to discover it's been around since the late 1800s.
Well, it goes way back when the old farmers used to have mules and horses. Mm-hmm. And, you know, anytime you've got two people together, you got competition. Mm-hmm. So back in those days, it started out in the 1800s being horse pulls, and it stayed horse pulls a long time. The first recognized gathering of tractors, though, was in 1929 in Bowling Green, Missouri. That was the first recorded history of tractor pulling beginning. Well, back then, of course, it was all stock. You know, they'd just gone from metal wheels. So it's got a very, very deep, long history. But as far as the sport being organized, it became organized in 1979 for safety standards.
When they started it back during that day, did they just pull the tractors they owned out of the field and hook them together and pull against each other? How did that actually work?
Well, a lot of that's happened, but then again, they also started out in the early days with like a drag. And what happened was, in the early days of pulling as we know it today, the people used to stand alongside the track as the tractor pulled down the track, and it would pull this drag. Well, people would actually step up on the drag as it went by. That was the very beginning of tractor pulling as we know it today. Now, with the power and stuff they got today, that couldn't happen, you know. Yeah. But back in those days, it was just stock tractors out of the field.
So as they step up on the drag, that would add additional weight to the pull, which would decrease or determine whether that tractor could pull or not.
That's right. Until the tractor spun out, they would keep adding people onto the sled. So that's the very early beginnings of the tractor pulling as we know it today.
Unbelievable. George, you know, back in the 70s, I think you were telling me that...
I think it was 76. Out at Leisure Living, I attended a tractor pull, and that might be the first one that's, you know, been here in the county.
Well, now you were obviously a much younger man then, and I was too. In fact, all of us was. When you attended that one back in the 70s, what kind of apparatus did they have then? Was that anything similar to the first starting, or did they have different kinds of drags, or how did they do that?
It was similar to what we're doing today. You didn't have as many tractors and as much horsepower as we have today, but we still made a lot of noise and smoke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, back in those days, it was primarily about 80% of the show was made up of stock vehicles that came out of the field in '76. Mm-hmm. And that was the beginning of tractor pulling under the national level in eastern North Carolina was 1976.
Well, now, when we look at these connections and what is happening here, I mean, I've read a little bit enough to see that it's not only nationwide, but it's worldwide, this whole issue of tractor pulling. The starting in the fledgling years back in the 70s when it was starting in this area, what was the kind of the driving force behind that? This was prior to the association and that kind of thing. What do you think really caused people to want to get out and compete and pull against each other? Because apparently this has been a growing movement for several decades.
It has been, and what really started in 1976 was back in those days, the local fire departments needed a way to raise money to buy fire trucks. Mm-hmm. I mean, fire trucks back then were $70,000, $80,000, and George can tell you now, you're looking at hundreds of thousands for a fire truck.
I think that baby take a seat in one of them now when it's in there.
But anyway, it grew from the need of fire departments and local things to raise money. And it really was made up of local farmers, and there were some what you would call professional tractors in the early 70s. But as we grew into the late 70s, it became more professional, and now today it's totally professional. We cannot run a stock vehicle due to insurance requirements anymore. It has to be NTPA certified and inspected, and SFI controls us just like NASCAR. We have to inspect the vehicles today for safety of the fans.
George, from your perspective, just kind of seeing this over time mature in this area, did you, because I know you've got a background, as I said a while ago, you've done a lot of different things. I go back a long ways with you, but you've done a lot of different things, and you've had experience at everything from the logwoods right on around. Did you have a vehicle into some of these early tractor pools yourself? Or?
We, not really. And we started out originally with antique tractor pulling. And one year, after all the tractors had pulled, this fella showed up with a pickup. And he said, "Can I pull?" It was for no points or no prize or no trophy.
Right.
He said, "Can I just make a run on your track?" You know, and we said, "Yeah, it'd be fine." Well, I think evidently he must have gone back and talked to Wayne and them, and about the track and what we had at Harrells. And so they approached us about wanting to put on a pool. That's sort of how we got started into it, And I think Wayne will probably tell you he was a little leery about coming to a little place in the middle of nowhere.
Well, Wayne, you mentioned earlier as we were talking, a lot of these things occur in large cities and urban areas, which is almost kind of opposite when you think about the dynamic. You kind of think rural area to start with. When you think tractors, you think rural area. So if there are large areas doing this, what caused it to kind of get into the urban population areas?
Well, communities with big heart really made it happen, because really National Tractor Pulling was designed for places like Raleigh, Winston-Salem. I mean, back in those days, it was the largest cities that were putting
population back.
Huge population. Well, Jimmy Thickpen was our president, and I was the event coordinator back then, and vice president. And we went to Harrells. They called us about putting on a pool. Well, needless to say, if you've never been to Harrells before, it's a community with a big heart, but not a whole lot of substance there. It's not
George would say you should go if you've never been, right, George?
Absolutely. It's the greatest group of people you've ever met. It kind of reminds me of Andy and Mayberry, Everybody knows each other, and they pull together. It is one of the most unique communities I have ever seen, and I enjoy going there every year for their annual banquets.
Is Harrells unique, or are you seeing more tractor pools in more rural locations with less density of population?
Well, honestly, it seems to work better in a small community like that, maybe a community of 2,000 to 3,000 people, simply because the community kind of pulls together and makes it happen. Just like we just ran in Pine Tops a couple of weeks ago. I mean, they draw thousands of people there for that event, just like George and them and Harrells draw thousands of people for the event. So it goes better, in my opinion, in small, middle-sized communities right now, more so than the larger cities. And I think it's because people in the larger cities have so much variety to do. There's 10 things going on in a weekend, where like Harrells, it's the tractor pool or the Blueberry Festival, one or the other, you're going to have to go to.
You can kind of zero in. So when we look at the dynamic of it, I noticed that you guys have had tractor pools at the state fair. Now, are they also familiar with other states that do this? Do they do those at the state fair as well as kind of demonstration things? Or?
Yeah, it happens a lot up north, and all the county fairs just about have tractor pools associated with them. The NC State Fair, of course, has been one of our longest running pools in North Carolina. It's been around for a long, long time, and it's just about a sellout every year at the NC State Fair. That is the culmination. That is the final national event of the year is held at the NC State Fair. There's 160 national events held in the United States and Canada, and that is the final event of the year. So that's the culmination, and that's one reason why we get so many pullers into the NC State Fair. They do a good job in the NC State Fair of hosting it, and it draws a lot of people into the state fair.
Well, just to kind of show you guys where we're at in the discussion here, and in kind of preparing for this show and talking to some folks about it, I had people to ask me, well, not only what a tractor pool is, but one of the first things a person mentioned to me, he said, well, what do they do? Take two tractors with a chain, hook them to each other, and they pull one in one direction and the other in the other direction. Was there any time in the history of this development of tractor pool that actually happened?
Not an organized event, but it's happened on farms before. I've seen it happen on farms. All you got to do is get two young boys together, and they think competition, they'll do anything.
They're going to test those limits.
Right, they're going to test those limits. But no, not in the National Tractor Pulling Arena. It's always been either a drag, or today it's gone to a sophisticated, what we call a weight transfer machine, a high-speed weight transfer machine. Much more sophisticated than it's ever been in the past.
And I want to talk about that in some detail when we come back from our break. But, George, I'm thinking about it in whether it's the logwoods or wherever it may be. You know, I could see, as Wayne just pointed out, that visceral sense in people, well, I want to show you what my machine will do or what this machine will do. Do you ever recall any kind of thing of that nature happening with equipment? Of course, we've got, I think everybody will remember, and we've got a lot of farmers that listen to this show, and they're out there on a red tractor, a green tractor, or a blue tractor, and they're pretty pumped up on what they drive in the field. Did you see that happening in the early days of development of this, where there was competition?
Yes, particularly with like the antique folks that we started out with. It was pretty tight competition between who was going to do this, and their tractor and mine and yours, and the red and the green, and they even painted some of the red ones black. I've seen that happen before.
Well, that's the kind of thing I think when we're talking about this, I want to kind of give our audience a sense of why this is all of a sudden come to fruition over decades, and it's just built and built to the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that's involved in it now. So, George, I think about when you said red and green, and you mentioned antique, I couldn't help but think about the old John Deere tractors that we used to have, and some people said they're called putt tractors, and I guess it was the way those tractors were built back then. I know you remember those, and they were always leveraged as being some of the most pulling tractors out there.
Right.
But we're going to take a short break in just a second. But as we come back, I want to kind of give you a set to be thinking about. I want to talk a little bit more about, Wayne, how you got into it, and George, we've talked a little bit about your history, but let's talk a little bit more why you got into this thing. We'll be back in a moment with We Should Know. Stay tuned. Call a friend, a neighbor, tell them to tune in. We're back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're kind of in the second segment of our show here called We Should Know. Thanking all of our sponsors, those folks that support the show, keep us on the air, keep us moving forward. We're coming to you on Star Vision TV, WCLN 1170 AM. Also, a summation reprint, the Sampson Weekly newspaper. You'll see some of the kind of high points of the show in there. We encourage you to look at the show 7 p.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on Star Vision Channel 16 right here in the area. We also want to kind of give a quick shout out to a lot of folks that mention us on the radio, Boogie Shoes Radio with Robert Stroud, of course Wayne Weeks with the Gospel Hour, Don Smith, and the Country Store, one of probably the most popular shows on the radio station here in the area. We thank those guys, the morning folks, the L-Man, the Z-Man, and Grandpa for kind of spouting their name out there occasionally and letting you know what's going on with We Should Know. And also, of course, the Fly, Tommy, in the afternoon as he brings us some music and entertainment as well. We have with us today two folks that you've been introduced to. If not, you're just listening in. Wayne Lewis with the North Carolina Tractor Pull Association. Wayne, thank you for being here. Of course, George McGill. I introduced George as a community leader. George, you've been involved in a lot of things, not only in Harrells, but throughout Sampson County. And most folks know the name of George McGill, as Wayne just mentioned in our first segment. Guys, let's talk a bit more about this historical kind of thing. Wayne, how did you get into this? What really, I mean, obviously you're intrigued and have a passion for tractor pulling. What just kind of got you involved and has been spinning for you for all these years?
Well, I came from a farm background, number one, so I came off the farm, and we had Oliver tractors. I went to my first national event in 1974. And I was just intrigued with the awesome power back in those days, and the setups and different things. But I became a fireman in Edgecombe County in Pine Tops, and we needed a fire truck for the rural fire department, and we were trying to raise money. Well, we cooked all the chickens and all the Brunswick stew we could and couldn't raise any money. So like George and them did in Harrells, we decided we were going to have a national tractor pull. And needless to say, in the town of Pine Tops of 1800, everybody was like, oh, no, you got to be kidding. You're not going to bring a national pull to Pine Tops. Well, it had its 37th year this past year. So and I was president of JC's that first year, very involved with the tractor pull. And as time grew, I think Pine Top's now South Edgecombe Rural Fire Department, that's the only fundraiser they do now, and they've raised over $2 million in tractor pulling in the past 37 years for that fire department.
Wow.
Very well staffed, great fire department, great community involvement, and I'm telling you, it's just a great event to go to. Like Harrells, it's just got heart, and they got great vehicles there. It's a great show.
George, you kind of got in this thing about 15 years ago and got interested in it. What, other than the fact that you went to that one pool that time, you said that back in the 70s, what kind of caught your attention that this was something that you wanted to bring to Sampson County?
Well, you know, of course, the first year was a trial. You know, about 30 minutes before the pool starts, you start wondering where the people are coming from.
Yeah.
But, you know, directly you got a line about 400 or 500 feet long waiting to get a ticket. And, of course, we found out that it was a good fundraiser, and, you know, it's enabled us to upgrade some equipment, buy some new equipment, you know, to do the job we do out there.
You know, Wayne, when we talk about the tractor pull and we think about what George was just talking about, there's also a huge number of sponsors that you guys have here in North Carolina. So I want you to kind of talk about how those sponsors benefit you, and as well, I want you to kind of tie it together with the North Carolina Tractor Pull Association, because there's a national Tractor Pull Association. Do you guys work with them connecting events? Are there like national champions that travel around the country? You know, I mentioned it like the Pro-Am golf tournament or something. This is like a huge event when it rolls in for folks that follow this kind of activity.
Yeah, United Pullers of the Carolinas is a formation of 3 different independent clubs out of North Carolina. It combined together. And now we're under the National Tractor Pullers Association. We are Region 4, which covers from Florida all the way up to Maryland and covers all the way over to Tennessee. So we're part of the National Tractor Pullers Association, and we coordinate our schedules with the national. Like I said, there's 160 events in America and Canada, and of course Harrells is one of those 160. So we've got corporate sponsors who just came on with us. We had some tractor dealers that just come on. We got all kinds of sponsors that's helping to pay the bills for the corporate, to keep the corporate surviving, and also some of that money filters down to the individual pullers under a point system. So we run 2 point systems. We run a local point system, and we run a national point system. You got all kinds of vehicles associated with this thing, and we're going to talk about that later, I'm sure. But in Harrells, you're going to see jet tractors. I mean, how many times have you ever seen a jet tractor in a field?
Not many of our listeners probably have never heard of a jet tractor.
Yeah, it's come a long way from the antiques. It's come a long way from the base pull we talked about, and now it's gone into totally professional. What you'll see in Harrells is going to be a professional national tractor pull.
That's amazing. Just the statement that 160 in the U.S. and Canada, and right here in Sampson County, we've got one of those 160. That's a pretty elite kind of position to be in. And when I'm saying that, George is sitting over there smiling because he already knows it. George, as we talk about this, we've got some folks right here in Sampson County that's heavily involved in pulling and so forth. Can you mention some of those folks, or at least one or two?
Earl Wells is really into tractor pulling. I think he has 4 tractors, and one of my firemen is even one of the drivers for one of them.
When we just throw that out as tractors, and you got to remember, now I grew up on a farm when a tractor was a 140 farmall, and we had one of the newest pieces of equipment in the community at that time. So when we're talking about tractors, and you mentioned Earl Wells, I believe, we're talking those 4 tractors. We're talking more than a few $1,000s, right? We're talking. Give us an idea of what kind of money we're talking about.
Wayne's probably got a
ballpark. Either one of you.
You're probably talking more than $1 million, well over $1 million in those tractors. I mean, these tractors are custom built. You got to remember, these tractors, when they come from the factory, designed to turn about 100 horsepower. They're designed to run 23 miles per hour. The tractors and a lot of other tractors that's going to be there this coming up on the 14th and 15th, I believe. These tractors are going to be turning 3,000 horsepower out of the same engine block that was designed to turn 100. And you're going to have some there that's going to be turning 7,000 horsepower, some of the jet tractors and also some of the multi-engine modified tractors. So it's gone, they're pushing them to the absolute limit, JW. It's gone from the point that there was a safety factor. Now it's at the point right now these tractors are being pushed to the limit just to try to win. And there's all kind of safety regulations. I've got a rule book back there with all kind of safety regulations because these things are being pushed to the limit. They really are.
You know, George, when I think about this, I start thinking about stock car racing and labeling. You know, for example, with tractors, you know, you mentioned the tractor, and I think of Alice Chalmers. I think about Massey Ferguson's, John Deere's, and all of these other kinds of tractor names out there. Do you still use the labeling of a certain name tractor, or have we gotten completely away from name brand tractors?
No, it still applies. When you said Alice Chalmers, you just made Earl Wells happy because he's an Alice Chalmers man, yeah. I can tell you that. But you still have to use the same sheet metal. In other words, it's required to make that tractor look like a tractor in that tractor class.
Exactly.
But once you get under the hood, you've got to use the same engine block, but then you can do all kinds of things to that block, fuel pumps, and I mean, under the diesel class, you're looking at a fuel pump to make these tractors pump 3,000 horsepower. You're looking at $20,000 for a fuel pump just to get the fuel into the engine. And then the massive turbos that's got to pump that air in there. You're looking at, I mean, it's just unbelievable the engineering that goes in these things.
George, do you see people that come to these events that are kind of decorated with whatever color or design that fits whatever tractor? Do they look at the equipment as their kind of model of what they're supporting, right, or is it the person driving it, or is it both?
More the brand of tractor. You know, you'll see folks with a John Deere T-shirt on, or International, or something like that. You know.
And I think one of the things that, you know, with that, Wayne, is that folks today, you know, I mentioned the smaller tractors that I remember growing up with. Some of these tractors today, I know I probably couldn't even operate, but these tractors are kind of like fire trucks. They cost a lot of money, just the ones that go into the field.
Oh, absolutely.
So when they're supporting it, that's a huge commitment on their part.
Mm-hmm. You know, tractors have gone so far away. I was like you, JW. I was raised up on a farm, and I've run old Olivers that all you had was a seat and a steering wheel. Mm-hmm. Well, it's come a long way now. These farmers have got GPS. It will, once you plant a field, it will remember where that field was, and it runs that row again. It's just amazing how far it's come. Now, we don't use that technology that far in tractor pulling, but they do use computers on tractor pulling to read the engine performance. When they get through running these tractors, a lot of them have computers, and it'll give them a printout exactly how hot each cylinder got, how much fuel went through that cylinder, and gives them all kind of information on the health of that engine. You start talking about some of these engines, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, you want to make sure you know what's happening inside of it, because the last thing you want to do is lay one of these on the track. And we've seen that happen in Harrells before, haven't we, George? Yeah. So.
George, when you think and just in your mind, just kind of reflect back in events in Harrells, how far does people drive? I mean, obviously, you know, Wayne just mentioned there's not that many people that live in Harrells when you look at it comparatively. So do you have a lot of folks coming from out of state, from other parts of the state? Give us some idea.
We usually probably a 60 or 75 mile radius. We see people coming. And
that's the core group.
Right.
So is some of those people are enthusiasts that follow these things around, Wayne? Do they follow it around from one place to the other?
Just like NASCAR, we have fans that follow us from event to event to event. I see those same people. I do the announcing for the tractor pulling, so I get a chance to see a lot of them. Mm-hmm. But yes, there are a lot of fans who follow it. No matter where we go, they're going to be there. But then again, it's so unique, the communities themselves, a lot of people will come in to watch it. Now, you may be a Chevrolet or Ford fan because we got trucks there also.
Oh, okay.
That quote, you call them a truck, but there's high performance, just like the tractors. It's just gone way beyond.
Well, we're going to take another break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We're talking about tractor pulling, North Carolina Tractor Pull Association. Wayne is here. Wayne is going to be back, as well as George McGill. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back, folks. We're on We Should Know. You're coming to us through the efforts and the pleasure of WCLN 1170 Radio, also Star Vision TV, also the Sampson Weekly newspaper, several different mediums to communicate our show. We're talking about something pretty exciting and something a lot of folks may not know about that happens here that has a national and global impact. And it's called tractor pulling. We've got Wayne Lewis with us with the North Carolina Tractor Pull Association. George McGill, community leader, man about town that brought tractor pulling to this county, to Sampson County, some years ago, about 15 years ago. And we're talking about it in the sense of tractor pulling. But Wayne, as we went to our break a while ago, you mentioned trucks. The interesting part of this, the evolution to trucks being involved in pulling, did that occur in just the past few years? Is that something that came along as tractors developed? How did the vehicle part of it enter this picture?
Well, back in 1977, in the early stages of developing tractor pulling on a professional level, there was a lot of people who were buying four-wheel drive trucks and they wanted the opportunity to pull them. Well, the National Tractor Pullers Association did not recognize them at that time, but in 1977, in Lumberton, North Carolina, they agreed to do a trial test, and there were 7 trucks that went to Lumberton and pulled. Well, they looked at them, they get a fan poll, and the fans loved them. So in Pine Tops, North Carolina, in 1977, the first national four-wheel drive truck class was added in this part of the region. So that's when it began in North Carolina, and it has been successful ever since. Now we have 3 classes of trucks. We've got the big four-wheel drive modifieds, we've got the two-wheel drive blown trucks, 2,500 horsepower plus, and then we got an entry point, which is the 4,000-pound trucks. So we got 3 truck classes that we'll be running, and something new we're trying, JW. Diesel trucks are a big thing now. We're going to be trying this year to develop a diesel class, what we call a pro stock diesel class, and we're going to offer that class in Harrells, and we're seeing if it will develop, because diesels are a big thing now, you know. So.
And George, when you think about trucks, do you have folks here that have trucks that are entered in these kinds of competitions, that people that live in the area, in Duplin, Sampson, Wayne, Wake, whatever county, you know, our listening audience is, do you have people that have these kinds of trucks that enter the event in Harrell?
I don't think we have anybody that lives right here in Sampson, but, you know, in some of the neighboring counties, you know, Wayne might know more about.
Yeah, probably out of Edenton. We've got some out of Edenton. Right now, it's required they all be NTPA certified. We used to run a stock class, JW, up until last year, and you know, anytime you get in competitive motorsports, it's supposed to be stock. Well, after the person runs it the first time, he starts turning screws and doing things to increase the horsepower. And K&K Insurance, who was our insurance provider, come back and said, look, we can't let stock trucks run anymore. They had a couple of injuries last year from stock trucks, so there's no stock vehicles in NTPA anymore. It is all NTPA certified, SFI certified trucks. So that kind of eliminated the local people. That's a bad thing, I think, in the short term, but probably a good thing for safety-wise in the long term.
And you mentioned a very important thing, and I think it's good maybe we draw a line here between the two. There has been some negative press media coverage on something called mudslings and so forth. We're talking a complete different kind of program when we're talking about tractor pulls than we are what folks get together and dig a few holes in a field and try to run trucks through. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So
absolutely.
Let's get into some of the safety kinds of issues. George mentioned earlier in the 70s him standing right there close to the sled or whatever as it goes by and folks jumping on. That don't happen now, correct?
That don't happen now. And there's been so many things added to the vehicles. I mean, we had things like years ago when a spark plug would blow out of an engine and it would go into the crowd. Now the trucks have got shields built, so if that spark plug comes out, it goes straight up. You notice the exhaust pipes no longer come out underneath the truck. It goes straight up, and that is in case a internal part comes out of that engine, it goes straight in the air. The rule book is written with page after page of things that's happened over the past that our insurance carrier and the NTPA, which is our ruling club, and they handle all the safety things that's created to protect those fans. And that's one thing we're very, very, very critical of, that we meet all the safety requirements as required by NTPA in the rule book.
George, as you looked at doing this in Harrells, did you have a particular location that Wayne and the association looked at and said, this particular site is the site? Did the site have to be approved and sanctioned and those kinds of things?
But we pretty much, by doing the antiques, had the track in place. And, you know, of course, we knew that we could use it for this events. But one thing several years ago we got looked into was guardrail. And some of my members questioned about, do we want to spend that much money to put up guardrail? I said, yes, we won't spend that much money, because I said the safety of our folks that come to watch this thing is important, and that's what we don't want anybody to get hurt. So we've got DOT guardrail on both sides of the track. The spectators are at least 50 or 60 feet behind that DOT guardrail.
So Wayne, when you look at it from your experience over the years with all these other events that's going on, what are some of the things that has occurred accident-wise? Give us an example of that has put some of these rules into place, some of the things that George was talking about, rails and distance from the track.
Well, we've had tractors to turn over. I mean, they do turn over. People think that tractor pulling, you don't have anything happen. You have engines to blow apart, and when they blow apart, you want to contain everything on the track. And also blowers, some of these blown engines, just like drag cars. You see at NHRA, there'll be vehicles like that. You've seen the blowers lift and go 150, 200 feet in the air. Well, we got SFI restraints on those blowers to keep those things from coming off those engines.
Well, it'd be like a bomb, wouldn't it, if it go off with 7,000 horsepower?
Exactly. It would go 150, 200 feet in the air, and where it comes down, nobody knows. Well, they're required to have SFI restraints on them. Even the diesel tractors like Earl Wells, they're required to have steel cables around them, because when they come apart, they come apart. So there's all kind of rules, because people over the past may have been injured. And if somebody's injured, there's coming a rule. I can assure you there's going to be a rule. And what we try to do is foresee things that hadn't happened yet that may happen as this horsepower is increased, and create those rules in the beginning. NTPA is the standard which everybody else is trying to live by as far as safety rules. They're the only one that's got a publication that's issued every year with NTPA safety rules, and which we have to adhere to. And all our officials that's going to be in Harrells is going to be SFI certified. Going to be certified. They've all been tested. They've gone to school, and they are looking for safety to make sure it's protected. You know, guardrails in case that tractor turns over. And we go through some film every year. Some of these tractors turn over, and they don't just turn over one time. I mean, they do end over end over end. So you want to keep those tractors out of that crowd. That's what you want to do to protect the crowd.
Draw us a picture here, both verbally and I think we're going to try to build some shots into some video into our conversation for those folks that are looking at us on TV. Give us a kind of, as much as you can, a painting of what one might see, because we've used the word sled. You know, we've kind of drawn a parallel between hooking two tractors together and pulling against each other. So what does this sled look like, and what's the importance of that, just from a lay point of view, for somebody that has no idea what we're talking about when we use those terms? Tell us what that is and how that operates.
Okay, the new term for it is high-speed weight transfer machine, and the ones we have are made by Von Bauer out of Iowa. If you've ever seen a John Deere corn planter, 36-row corn planter, Von Bauer made that John Deere corn planter out of Patton, Iowa. Well, he developed this machine, and he's probably, I would say, the premier sled builder. It allows, if you can envision a trailer with a weight box in the back and a driver on it, then when you take off, that weight box starts shifting up that rail. Well, it's really easy to get started because the pan is a big pan, but it's only touching on the nose as you take off, so you got very little resistance. Well, as you get going, and the speed part allows them to get up some good speed, and as that box goes up the rail, it hits a micro switch, and that pan will flatten out. This puts a load on the tractor, but even more than that, when that weight box gets all the way to the front, it hits a blowdown device that lifts the back axle off the ground, so therefore the tractor's got the full weight of that sled. Now, in Harrells, we'll have to put as much as 70,000 pounds in that weight transfer machine to stop these jet and multi-engine and super stock tractors. Wow. Tractor weighs 7,500 pounds to 8,000 pounds. It'll take 70,000 pounds to stop it.
So to give us a comparison, average loaded 18-wheeler truck on the highway.
You're looking at about 75,000, 80,000 pounds for 18-wheeler on the highway loaded.
Wow.
Loaded.
So we're talking a huge amount of resistance that the tractor or the piece of equipment is pulling against. So it's once somebody gets there, they're going to see this device there. The vehicles that's in the contest will actually back up to that and hook up to it.
That is correct.
And then it starts from there. Is there one or two vehicles pulling at the same time?
One vehicle pulling at a time.
Because you have one sled, so one vehicle's pulling at a time. What about winners, losers, that kind of thing? What are the rewards to those folks that are in this contest?
There is prize money. There is a prize money given to the winners. It pays down through 10 places. So there is money for the winners. Also, there's a points championship for the winners. So a lot of them are running for the points championship, and then a lot of them is running for the money also to help defray some of the expenses. You can't build a $500,000 tractor and pay for it without a tractor pulling, and I can tell you that. It's a misnomer for that. But the thing of it is, I always go back to the guy with the bass fishing boat. Yeah. You know, you talk to him and he says, well, you know, I got $50,000 on my bass boat, and you think, well, are you ever going to catch enough bass to pay for it? Probably not. Tractor pulling is sort of the same way.
And probably the same thing with golf as well.
Exactly.
And other sports.
Right.
You got to have a passion for it. You got to be either involved in it one way or the other as a participant or actually involved on the track. Exactly.
A lot of pride goes in these tractors. I'm telling you, if you come to any one of our national events, you're going to see NASCAR quality haulers, you're going to see NASCAR quality vehicles. I mean, it's going to be nice.
We're going to take another break, and we'll be back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We're talking about tractor pulling. Call a friend. Our last segment coming up. We hope you're tuning in, and if you missed us, 7 p.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. The name of the show is We Should Know. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The name of the show is We Should Know. We're talking about tractor pull today. We're talking with Wayne Lewis, North Carolina Tractor Pull Association, George McGill, Man About Town, and Harrells, and other activities going on around the county. George, we've got a tractor pull coming up in Harrells pretty soon here. In fact, in the next couple of weeks. When is that happening?
June 14th and 15th.
June 14 and 15, 2 days of tractor pull. George, kind of tell us what, first of all, who does people call if they want to go, they hear this show and they say, I've never been there. We got a lot of people that'll look at me and say, well, there's not a whole lot to do around Sampson County. Well, I beg to differ. There's a whole lot of things to do. The question is, can you get to all of it? So who do they call to get more information? Is there a telephone number?
Phone number, of course, 910-532-4276.
4276, okay.
You can also go on tpool.com.
And that's called, say that again?
tpool.
tpool.com.
Right.
Okay, tpool.com and 532-4276. Those are the two things. Now tell us about tickets and seats. Are seats arranged in such a way that you pay like at a football game, you can get box seats? Or tell us how that works. You just, wherever you can sit?
Wherever you can sit, and you can bring your lawn chairs.
With an umbrella if you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe somebody with a fan. No, we probably ain't got many people doing that, do we?
But all the seats are, basically the same price. We don't have a difference in price.
Stadium seats kind of set like at a typical high school football game. Okay. So how much are tickets?
Adults are $18. Children 6 to 12 are $5, and 5 and under are free.
Okay. Do you get at these things in Harrells particularly? Is it a family event? Is it a guy event? Tell us what kind of population you get.
It's mainly a family thing. We get children from all ages, adults, older folks, different age classes.
Mm-hmm. When you look at it nationally, and George mentioned there's 2 days, I want to get back and kind of talk about a little bit about what goes on those 2 days. Does most of them have a 2-day event, or is most of them 1-day event?
Most of them in the Southeast are 2-day events. We run Friday night and Saturday night. That way, if we get rain one night, we got another night to recoup. Okay. But most of us run 2 nights. You got pullers that drive maybe 400 or 500 miles to get here.
Wow.
Definitely, you want to give them an opportunity to compete, to help recover some of the costs.
So George is set up for a 2-night event, right?
Yes.
So this is on a Friday and Saturday night, June 14 and 15. What time does people need to be there? And as you said, seats are first come, first serve. What time do you usually see people arriving on the 14th?
usually around 6:30.
Okay.
The event starts at 7:30. You know, if you want to get a good seat, then you know we try to as far as parking, is fairly close. I have seen crowds lined up all the way down to the post office on the shoulder of the road, but in recent years we've acquired a field close by that's helped where people can park closer and not have to walk so far.
Now, can they get tickets in advance for this? And when they get to the gate, they've already got their ticket? And do you have for example, if they buy tickets in advance, can they go through a line that may be shorter than folks that's just standing there waiting to buy a ticket?
We don't do any advance tickets.
Okay, no advance tickets. So they can call, but the dates are 14th and 15th, and they need to just show up.
Right.
What time's your gate open, George? What time you open the gates?
On Friday we'll open about 6. And Saturday it might be 5:30 because on Saturday they do the pedal against drugs, the pedal pool
For kids.
for children.
Now that's an outstanding program. We could talk a whole program just on that. But that's another thing, Wayne, as we talk about these events, there's a lot of positive offshoots that exist around these events. And of course, George just mentioned one of those. Are there other events that also do different kinds of projects that are associated with it?
Well, we're part of the DARE program, and we do pedal against drugs, and we've got a tractor set up especially for kids. Now, believe me, we can't go buy a tractor from a John Deere dealer because some of these kids can pedal up to 400 pounds, believe it or not.
And DARE is Drug Awareness Resistance Education, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. So we're part of that, and what happens is we'll come to Harrells and all of our events that we participate in, and we'll take and break them down in three weight divisions, 40 to 50 pounds, 51 to 60, and 61 to 70, boys and girls. And the champions from Harrells will go to the NC State Fair on opening weekend, and they will compete against all the other champions from across the southeastern United States. So it's quite an honor to win in Harrells or anywhere and to be able to go to the NC State Fair and participate.
And I would remind folks, George, that of 160 events, and you're looking at the United States and Canada, that is kind of an elite position to be in because you're talking a huge area, 160 events, and you happen to be one of them. That's a huge plus for this area, this region of the state.
Right. Like I tell people, I say we put the town on the map 2 nights out of the year.
Well, I think Wayne mentioned a while ago it's the one time during the year that you can actually get in a traffic jam in Harris.
Right.
That's right. And they say, JW, that a tractor pull, and they've done some studies on this, and they've had independent research areas do it, that a tractor pull such as Harrells will bring in almost $200,000 to the economy of Sampson County for that weekend between fuel, people eating, admission, the money they make being put back in the community. You're looking $250,000 being added back into the community. And I'd like to mention one other thing, too. Sure. They go through a lot of expense at Harrells. They'll seat about 4,000 people. So you got a town about 183 that'll seat 4,000 people a night.
That's huge.
That's huge. So don't worry about the seating. If you want to come, you've got a bleacher seat. You may want to bring your little cushion to sit on, but they've got seating for you there.
Well, I mean, I think it's huge, too, for this area because, I mean, as I sit here and think about it, you know, we've got at the one end of the county in the Spivey's Corner area, we've got the National Hollering Championship. In the southern end of the county in Harrells, we've got a nationally recognized tractor pool. So it's huge when you look at the rural area, but it's leaders like George and others that make these kinds of things happen. George, when we talk about that kind of money that Wayne just alluded to, does that plow back into the fire department for fire trucks? What kinds of things is that money spent for?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we use it to upgrade older equipment and, of course, make new purchases of different things. You know, nowadays, like everything else, the cost, and of course, when you say fire, that just ups the price tag to anything that we have to buy. You know, so it's through the years has enabled us to upgrade our equipment and keep some good equipment to work with.
Well, and plus it gives folks a way of doing that to help the fire department, and then they get this unbelievable entertainment, and for many people, I guess it's an adrenaline rush. I mean, if you're just sitting there looking at it, I'm sure you just get that charge just like you do a stock car race.
Yeah, you can watch it on TV all you want, but until you go and actually feel it and see it, the fire, I mean, it's just something you have to experience live sitting there at the track. Wouldn't you say, George, You can't get it off of a videotape. You've actually got to go see one. And plus, these guys, they got some of the best concessions in the world. Fire departments, I mean, they got everything from homemade ice cream to whatever. So if you go and you're hungry, wait till you get there. They got you covered.
You don't need to bring a bag lunch, George. Is that correct?
I encourage people to come hungry, barbecue sandwiches, homemade ice cream, hot dogs, funnel cakes. So,
you name it, it's going to be there. It's almost, it sounds like kind of a fair or kind of a circus atmosphere where there's a lot of things going on. Mm-hmm. The main event is the tractors. When and what time, George, will the first tractor roll up on the line, hook up to the sled, and start pulling on Friday, the 14th?
7:30.
7:30. So if you go and see the first tractor go into competition, you need to be there before 7:30 because it's going to take you a few minutes to get in and get seated. Get that libation, whatever it may be you're going to get at the vendor. Go over there and sit down and hold on. Mm-hmm. Are we talking a lot of noise at these things? I mean, I'm trying to put this out there totally to the novice that comes. Does folks need to bring earplugs or something?
Well, earplugs will be available. If you've got them, you need to pick up a set and bring them with you because it does get loud. If you've ever been to a drag strip, these engines, like a drag car, a lot of these engines, now some of them are not that loud, but then again, when you start getting into a jet engine or you start getting into a tractor with 3 big blown engines on it, it does get real loud. It gets noisy. So, you can pick up a pair of earplugs probably cheaper somewhere like Walmart than you can, at the vent. So I'd pick up a pair, wouldn't you, George?
Right.
But you're going to have somebody there selling earplugs. Yeah. George has not going to miss a beat, is he? Earplugs, lemonade, whatever you need.
T-shirts.
Yeah, T-shirts, whatever you need. You were there and you got a T-shirt for it. So if somebody's listening in the Raleigh area, Wake County, we do have some listeners, believe it or not, up in Wake County, never been to an event. When they roll in, they're going to expect not only an exciting time, but something they might want to bring their camera, even other than their phone camera, because they're going to take it back to whatever area they come from and say, you're not going to believe where I went.
Absolutely. And the kids and the parents, whoever, if they go out into pits, we got open pits. We just ask you to be cautious because we're moving stuff around in those pits. But a lot of these pullers have full color photographs. They'll be glad to sign them, autograph them for you. So go around and go out in the pits. We encourage you to go out and look at some of this stuff and get your autographed pictures and stuff. So.
Legends with us, about 10, 15 seconds to wrap up, George.
Just looking forward to another good year of tractor pulling.
Okay, and that's June 14 and 15 in Harrells. Again, the number is 532-4276. 532-4276, 910 area code, and tpool.com, ttompool.com. So you can go to the web. Wrap up for us here in about 20 seconds, 20, 30 seconds.
It's going to be a great show. Harrells does a fantastic job. I guarantee you if you come, you won't be disappointed. These guys, you can tell their heart's into it, and it's going to be a great event. If you're living in Sampson County or the counties around it, you're going to miss something if you don't come. Where else can you go for a motorsport this good for $18 and see millions of dollars worth of equipment out there?
Well, Wayne Lewis, I want to thank you for being here and taking time to come down with the North Contractor Pool Association. Of course, George McGill, community leader, Fire Chief, Fire Association. George, I could probably just spend a half the show just talking about things you're involved in, but thank you for looking at Harrells and Sampson County and the surrounding county and bringing this unique event to us. We do appreciate you being here today. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching We Should Know. We're coming to you on Channel 16, Star Vision TV, WCLN 1170, and the Sampson Weekly newspaper. We encourage you to stay with us. We'll see you again next week on the radio.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question or comment regarding this or any episode, please send your email questions and or comments to jwsimmonsedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday afternoon beginning at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.